Yeah, this is gonna be good.
Ben,
Yeah,
I didn't realize Ben was going to do it in a different room from me. I thought he was going to be doing it with me in here.
yeah, you should be sitting on the couch together.
Oh, sorry. I just
Yes.
I just had to set the recording up on the other computer, so I think we're good to go.
Yeah, this is cute.
Oh, good to see you. How you doing, Julian?
Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing great. I've been on this 5-hour what's the word for it? Flow state for like 5 hours.
Amazing.
And it's driving me crazy.
Are you working on the blog post?
And what?
Are you working on the blog post?
I started it during lunch, but my mind is just going so fast that I can't do anything really. So
I know the feeling. I think today around 11 o'clock, 10 a.m., we started having the conversation on the Discord, and it seemed to generate this momentum that just, and then all of a sudden, the rest of the day has been very much in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and exciting.
and I think it was the Discord that did it for me. It was just the conversation that got going, and then my mind is, I couldn't even listen to podcasts anymore because I was just like, my mind was overpowering the voice in my ears, if you know what I mean.
That happens.
Like when you're listening to John Vervaeke and you're thinking about stuff, and then after 20 minutes you realize you're actually listening to a podcast, but you're not hearing it because you're so preoccupied with your own thoughts. So
yeah, I'm glad that's not just me. Actually, I was worried I had a real bad attention problem. But maybe what we're saying is that what's happening inside our brains is way more interesting than Vervaeke.
Yeah. I like what Vivek is up to, but and I just love the passion he brings to his work too. Like he just loves everything he has to say, and he just loves his whole project, and he just loves what he's up to, and it's fun to listen to. But he's not like a super exciting person to listen to, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the passion does come through, so I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we noticed that he, there's some moments where he seems to get angry. There are points that he seems to find very crucial to understand.
Yes. Yeah.
Audience, like, okay, listen.
I can connect with that. Like when I'm talking about something and then I get passionate, my voice almost becomes angry. Like that's what happens to me too. So I get it.
Yeah. Like you do that too, and I'm always like, why are you being so harsh? I'm just
yes.
Yeah, it's a lot of just grabbing the air for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I just got back from a run, a little workout.
Nice. How far?
Just a mile. So I think I ran to a local park where there's calisthenics equipment.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's in the downtown Sacramento area. So there's usually a couple of schizophrenics and people on drugs hanging around. But you can get a good workout, and usually if you go early enough. But I find calisthenics to be I think there's something in the movement and you're not lifting. You don't have to prescribe yourself with a set amount of weights or reps. You kind of just feel it out, and you're leveraging your own body weight in order to get what you need out of it. So it's a lot more simple, and yeah.
I've always been nervous about doing like workouts with weights because of just you have to have your posture perfect, or you can mess yourself up. So when I've done workouts, it's always been like push-ups or planks or these types of things, or jogging is something I do a lot, more than anything, I guess.
I had a dance while you were out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, while you were out for a run, because I realized like I had been in my head all day, and I was like, oh, we're gonna talk, and I'm in a super weird like cerebral space. So I was like, I need to like be in my body more.
Was it Taylor Swift?
It was Taylor Swift.
Oh, Taylor Swift, really? I actually have.
Yeah.
There's this one song by Taylor Swift that I just love. "Long Live." Do you know "Long Live" by Taylor Swift?
I like that.
I love that
I'm
song.
like a not so secret fangirl. It's like my guilty pleasure. Try not to feel guilty about that.
Yeah, and then
It's
me being a music it's
yeah, it's the kind of song when Ben asks me what type of music I like, I would never share, but I do have
so it's a
this one
wise,
Taylor Swift song I
it's a
love.
wise
It's a what?
response.
So do you guys go to?
What do we got?
You guys keep cutting off a bit. There's anything you can
I wonder
do.
why. I wonder if it's. I don't know. Internet should be okay.
Is this any better?
It's too early. Yeah, it just happens like every minute or so. You just cut off a bit, and it also doesn't help that you're not super clear. Yeah, but
we don't have a microphone, do we?
No.
No, we don't have any microphone stuff.
Yeah, we're
That's
just on the
fine.
Wi-Fi. I don't know how to fix it because it is what it is.
yeah, it'll work for sure. So, do you guys like go to Paul Vanderklay's church? That would be pretty cool.
We did a few times. Yeah. It's on the other side of town, so it's like, and neither of us drive, so it's a taxi ride there, taxi ride back, and we really enjoyed the times we went. I think there are things we really enjoyed, and then things that we were unsure about.
Yeah.
I think the things we were unsure about is I guess it's typical of a Protestant church. I think Paul's sermons are just expertly woven, like these very, like the content is so intellectual, but the way in which he delivers it is accessible. It's just it's holding the two opposites at the same time is just really interesting and engaging. But like not being from a Christian background, like we have like awkward issues with singing with people. Holding hands, like it's completely foreign to us. And
holding on, boy, yeah. Yeah, I come from a very like my tradition has this super dry church service. Like what does it look like? So we have church like most days of the week, and then we have like this 1.5 hour, we call it a leia on Sunday. But like it's very dry because it's sort of the opposite of Paul isn't probably too far on the charismatic side, but like we come in, then we sing this hymn, like the congregation is like this slow, old-fashioned hymn. Like there's nothing upbeat about it. It's just this old German song, and then the pastor stands up and then he speaks for maybe 15 to 20 minutes, and then we kneel down and then he prays, and then we leave. So that's what church looks like here. It's very simple, very and then so whenever I encounter like people who put their hands up in worship or like holding hands or like I mean if I went to a charismatic church and saw people like falling down and wiggling about and whatever, that would just put me so out of my comfort zone. It's not even yeah.
It's I think the way we were listening to an author called Mary Carr, who you can explain who Mary is because
do you know Mary Carr? She's a memoirist and a poet, but she got famous for her first memoir called The Liars Club, which was about her upbringing, her troubled childhood. But she's just like this brilliant writer and hilarious. But she was an alcoholic, got sober, and found God, essentially. So that's a big part of her story.
Yeah.
I don't know where you were going with that.
She was describing something her and her son did, which was they called it Church-orama, which was every week they would go and visit different churches around the city, just get a flavor for what the different communities were like and what worship looked like in different contexts. And I guess we're at that stage now where we're really educating ourselves about the variety and the differences across different denominations of Christianity. But there are very different things that are appealing from each of them. Like there's something to do with is it tulip in Calvinism?
Yes.
That kind of makes sense to me intellectually, but then it's the thing that is, I think, maybe I'm not familiar. I won't be able to recall it, but it was.
I could figure it out if I thought a bit. It's total depravity. U is unconditional, unconditional or unlimited? Unconditional atonement.
Right.
Yes. L is limited something. Maybe that's limited atonement, and the first one is something else.
I wouldn't be able to recall, but the way it was described when I briefly looked at it felt appealing from a kind of sense-making left brain perspective. But then when you start looking at the practices in Orthodox, there's something mystically appealing to me in that too. So I'm interested I'm interested to see what kind of things from different faiths appeal, and what's important. I'm not sure what is the most important thing. So, but I think the idea of just going and checking out and speaking to people and just embedding ourselves in different contexts is really interesting for me at the moment, at least.
What about you, Kacey?
I feel like when I'm like, the only experience I have getting in touch with God has been like me alone by myself for the most part. And I was kind of raised Catholic. I went to Catholic church a little bit with my grandma growing up, and I haven't spent a lot of time like in any sort of communal setting that's religious. And so I'm interested just to see what's out there and how that fits in. And I think when we've gone, it's been a little bit like I don't have my bearings. I'm trying to pay attention to what's happening, and I'm not like into the experience in the way that I would ultimately like to be. So it's hard to tell.
That's interesting. Yeah, this is like the exploratory mode is on it. You want to get into the sort of the participatory mode, or just like in the experience, and you don't have to always be like watching everything and figuring out what's going on. And that's interesting.
We're learning just in general is that doesn't come first. Like you have to do the thing in order to like get into that space. And I think I always want it to be the opposite, where I'm just like,
great. You want to be sure. Go ahead. That kind of I think we learned that when we met, and we jumped into a relationship the day we met, and we didn't think about that in any real way. We kind of just both said, is this something we want to do? I'm pretty sure about it. And we went from there, and we've had challenges, and we got married in February. So that was after 6 months of knowing each other, and we were really learning as we go. And this sense of being shackled to each other and there not being anywhere else to go has been it's been an invitation to do some looking inward towards ourselves, and having some difficult conversations. But we've learned to know each other through that process, and that's been like, well, we're like, not to be too mushy, but we're kind of falling in love all over again as we introduce God into the mix. Like it's like the three of us having a nice
This is amazing. Yeah, it's such a leap of faith, getting married, isn't it? I was talking with a friend of mine she's married. She got married like a couple of weeks ago, but I talked with her a couple of months before she got married, and we were talking about Kierkegaard's Fear and Trembling. And I told her about the night of faith and the night of infinite resignation, and she just connected that to her sort of taking this leap into marriage despite, they know each other, and they know they have their disagreements, and they have their fights, and yet they're deciding to embark on this life together. It's something it's a movement of faith. But Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, I think looking back, it makes a lot more sense now, but we knew something strange was happening when we met. And I guess I wasn't exactly atheist. I definitely wasn't an atheist when we met, but I didn't have a intimate knowledge of God. I would have agreed that God is a necessary intellectual device to describe the universe, and probably would have got that far with it. But when we met, that just started opening all these doors, and it was almost like I couldn't keep underestimating. Well, I kept putting things down to coincidence, and then that stopped making sense after a while.
Yeah.
Out a little bit.
There was so much about our meeting that just felt like there was no way to make reasonable sense of it, and so it was like
there was an intention to it.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, the most what is obvious or clear way I'm encountering or seeing God in my life recently is just providence, like just the way things seem to fall into this coherent pattern, that things seem to come into my line of things, seem to appear to me at the right time, people seem to come to me at the right, these types of things. It's just this providence. I'm going somewhere, like, you know, I was listening to this conversation between Job and Name. This guy Name, did you hear that? It was a good conversation, but he was just making the point that he sort of sees this coherence to his life developing, that he's come from somewhere and he's going somewhere, and that's how I feel. Yeah, and it's great that you. Yeah.
I feel exactly that, and I think I've always felt that. Like, I feel like the defining thing about how I think about my life is always like this intuitive, like, I'm being led where I'm supposed to be. But it wasn't until we met that, like, I started to think about that in like a religious way. Like, I was just kind of like, something I
intuitively. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
When you introduced that, Kacey would introduce those ideas to me, say, I have faith that things are going the way they're supposed to be going, and that there's a plan. And I would be like, no, that sounds like absolute fooey to me. And that I was very much I had this idea that I had complete agency over my own destiny.
Yes, that's it. I've become much more comfortable with the fact that I'm not in control, that I'm going somewhere. Like, I don't think I've given up entirely on the fact that I don't think I've been, sort of, it's sort of this mutual thing where, yeah, I'm going somewhere and I have to, here's an example. Like, I think I told Ben about this. Like, there was this person in my community who I felt wronged by somehow. And then I think I said some things behind his back, which I shouldn't have said. And then I suddenly felt this twinge of conscience where I thought, I shouldn't have said that. What the Christian thing to do would be to go and reconcile with this guy. And then I just sort of fought that for a few days. And then I decided, okay, well, I can't deal with this anymore. I'll just go talk to the guy. And then I went and talked with the guy, and then we had this amazing conversation, and I left reconciled and, sort of feeling the presence of God again, and with a clean conscience. And it was just like, where you have to go. You can resist if you want to, but that's I don't know if that's entirely what we mean by providence, but I think it sort of fits in, where there's sort of this path in front of me that I have to follow. And it
definitely requires you taking action, and often I find like some of those decisions feel so difficult, like like almost like just really like I don't gonna do that. And then I do it, my life just moves. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's different. I tend to get plagued by guilt if I don't do the right thing. It's always there in the back of my mind. But the free will element is confusing for me because I'm trying to reconcile how I don't have the language for this, but why I was chosen to come to know God in the way I am now, and on this huge and between how you want to conceptualize it and the person who doesn't, and is there an element of free will in there? And this is all very interesting to me at the moment. It's like, how does how can we capture that and leverage it for a good, basically?
It's a tough question.
I was hoping you had a very short answer for me, Julian.
I have a bit of something which I don't think is all that helpful, but I think it does answer maybe a part of it. Kierkegaard has this notion of inwardness, and he says you can't know another person's inwardness, and you never know. In Fear and Trembling, there's there's the night. You guys know the difference between the night of infinite resignation, the night of faith? So the night of infinite resignation is someone who sort of just gives everything up for a greater good.
Right.
You could see it sort of like these Greek myths of this king who decides to sacrifice he needs to sacrifice his son for fair weather, so that he's sort of sacrificing his son for the nation. So there's this greater good, or you could even go to the level of God, and you could say, Jephtha. Am I saying that right? I think I'm saying the German version of it. But there's the story of a guy in the Old Testament who goes off to war, and then he prays to God and says, I'll sacrifice the first thing that comes across my path when I come home, if you give me the victory. And so he goes off to war and he succeeds, and then he comes home, and then the first thing he sees is his daughter coming with a tambourine to celebrate him coming back. And then he has to keep his promise, and he lets his daughter have these 2 months of saying goodbye to her friends, and then he sacrifices her. So that's the night of infinite resignation, because he's giving something of great value up for something even higher. And then there's the night of faith. And what he does, he makes this incomprehensible move where it gives up the world but receives it back. He gives up something of infinite value but then receives it back. So he's sort of living in this. I often think of when Christ says, don't fear what you shall eat or what you shall drink or what you shall wear. I will provide. So it's that sort of living in this trusting space where you've sort of given everything up, but you're getting it back, and that's that dynamic place of trust.
Is that also related to Abraham and Isaac?
Yes. And I think the best example is Christ going to the cross and then being resurrected. So he gives up the world, but he receives the world back and he becomes king. So, right, that's the ultimate example. But Kierkegaard says, you can't, you never know who is the knight of infinite. You can't tell who these people are just by looking at them, because you can't see what's going on inside, the movement of faith they're making inwardly. So I guess my basic point is, you could look at your friend and think he's he's just dead inside. He's not struggling with faith. He's not struggling with the same things that, but he could in reality be, deep existential anguish.
Yeah.
Here's an example from my own life. So I have this friend who, I was thinking the same thing you were about. Why am I so interested in following Christ, and yet, here's my friend. He grew up in the same community I did, but he doesn't seem to care at all. He just seems to be content to, just live the basic aesthetic life of, just partying and whatever. And, at some point a few months ago, I started noticing, like I would have a conversation, then he would say something, sort of strange, like something strange he would say something out of place, in the conversation. You could sort of tell there was something going on underneath, and it was sort of bubbling up sometimes. And I sort of started to see these things. And then one day I decided to have a conversation with him. And I just sort of realized he was actually, sort of struggling with his faith and searching for something and trying to get somewhere. In this person, I thought, what's going on? Where is God in this person's life? Why am I chosen and he not, type of deal.
Right.
So
I think I noticed something similar with someone I was having, I had a similar impression of in my family, who I thought just hadn't given any thought to any of this stuff at all. And he was saying, he's a teacher, and he was saying, the other teachers just don't get it. Like the reason why I relate to the kids better than they can is because I had the same terrible upbringing. I had the same rough childhood that they did, and that's how I relate to them. And other teachers, they just don't get it. They don't get it. And really, I realized at the end of the day that was more, whether I think he understands it or not, I think that was more of an invitation to well, he was trying to set the stage for telling his story, because he was like, I should do talks and I should try and teach the teachers about this. Really, it just seemed like he was looking for an opportunity to talk about how much of a hard time he had, rather than talk about why a difficult time can set you up to relate to other people who have a difficult time. So yeah, I'm learning to read between the lines, I guess. People a lot and ask questions to bring that out.
Remember Paul's conversation with Rod Hugan? No. So Rod is the guy with the big beard. He's a pastor from where. He's one of Paul's friends, and he had this. He was talking about this couple called Ruth, and I'm not sure who the other one was, but Rod was saying, like, when he was a kid, I think, how did this go? Like, I think his father died, and then this couple who were friends with their parents suddenly like stepped in, and they were there for their entire childhood. They helped them out. They became like second family to them. And it's just it's just the point. It's just such a small scale little thing that you don't. I sort of see this in my own community, where you wonder if other people are as serious about this stuff as you are, and then you sometimes see these glimpses of people, sacrificing themselves for others, and that's what's beautiful about it. It's when the particular shines forth with God, when you see God in the little things. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been trying to go action first into a few things. Like, we can have really silly arguments. I think most couples feel the same way. There was a moment yesterday where we were about to have an argument about how many glasses of water we should be filling up. and putting it in the fridge to cool. He was like, we just need 2. And I'm like, we should do 5 because anyway, she said something and I really wanted to argue. And I just said, you're right. You know what? You're right. Just forget it. She was like, you don't mean that. You clearly feel very differently. And I said, well, I'm trying to change that by just doing that.
I guess the next step is for her to say you were right, isn't it?
There we go. We're trying to come up with little hook phrases that we can use when we have those uncomfortable interactions. So like, you know, so because I can be very critical, or my tone can be very direct and kind of accusatory and adversarial. I think
I'm a sensitive little flower.
Yeah. What if you're both at the same time?
Well, we trigger each other constantly. It's like a weird aspect of our relationship. I feel like another reason why it feels like we were like destined to be together is that our issues are like perfectly like
symmetrical,
like aligned, so that we just bump up against each other. So we have no option but to like work through our issues.
Wow. Yeah.
But often, like we've struggled doing that, and like it'll be like we're just locked in this like loop,
spiral.
Like where what he's doing is upsetting me in a certain way, and the way that makes me react is triggering something in him, and it's just like we've done so much work though. Yeah,
we've realized that it's all in the moment. You just have to choose different.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things I'm learning is I'm very attached to my emotions. Like I feel like my emotions are me, and I've had to do some work to distance myself. And so like the thing about you saying you're right, and I'm like, well, you don't feel that way. Like I can tell you're just saying that. And like I was trying to reject that as being inauthentic, but it's like I'm learning.
That's a big deal for me.
Yeah, like and reading like some Chinese wisdom, ancient wisdom talks about ritual too, and how like you have to do the thing first. And even if you don't feel it, your feelings will catch up, and that you are like this changeable.
Wow, yeah.
You are not this like self that is like emotional, sensitive, whatever. I react this way all the time because I'm this person. It's like you have the opportunity always to change.
I was slipping into this. Kacey pointed this out to me, that my character is used to be kind of easygoing or free, but before Kacey met me, but I was slipping into this story about myself that I don't know if you hear it, people are like, whatever you do, just don't annoy me because you don't want to make me angry. Like, watch out. Like I was slipping into kind of that story, so that I had some kind of insurance against my personality or character. And that, you know, as long as I was aware of them and I incorporated that into my identity, that I didn't need to work on them.
Yeah.
And
that's
yeah. And then Kacey said, you know, that's just the story you're telling yourself, Ben. And
like,
wow. Yeah.
That you've fallen into. Like this is the pattern of how I'm reacting. I'm like irritable, and I like.
That's profound. Yeah. Profound.
Rather than, but I mean, like all of this, like I'm not achieving this on a day-to-day basis. Like.
Oh yeah. Well, we kind of know it before we can do it.
Yeah.
In this case.
Yeah.
And we've got a few things we need to work through. We're trying to keep a rule of prayer going, and it's semi-successful, you know. But we're realizing the incremental differences when we do submit to you know the ritual, and that's powerful.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking about like you know how powerful marriage can be, the way you guys are doing it as self-transformative, because of the way you're sort of holding each other accountable, speaking the truth. That's so positive. It's it's like you said, your opposite personalities are creating new life.
Yeah,
it's great.
It's crazy. And I think the relationship functions in a sense where like that is something bigger than the both of us, and it's like we finally have something that's like
it's this thing between us. It's the space between us that we're trying to enter into and trying to cultivate into this like organism of its own, rather than like I need my needs met, you need your needs met. That's part of the equation.
Yeah.
The real important.
We're gonna damage the relationship if like we don't. And
it's like an egg.
Yeah, I mean, like I've been able to do things that I was never able to do like before this relationship, like give up drinking.
We both give up drinking at the same time.
Yeah. I was a problem drinker. And,
wow.
Yeah. But yeah, like the accountability is just, it's been so transformative.
Yeah, and there's nowhere to hide. It's like, there's just nowhere to hide. It's like, we have some fun examples. Like, I'll ask Kacey to go to, when she's at the supermarket, I'll say, can you pick up some juice or something? And she'll come home and I'll be like, oh, did you pick up that juice? And she'll go, they didn't have any. and I'll go, you forgot, didn't you? And she'll go, yeah.
That happened once. I usually don't lie about something so insignificant. But.
Yeah. Oh, but that's going to use a fun example. Like, there's silly things like that.
That is the kind of little thing that could start could get people annoyed and start something. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow. And I think what's so positive for you guys is I don't know how big this is, but like the meetup group also seems to be probably doing something where, I'm noticing from both of you how incredibly open and vulnerable you are. Like you're not afraid to share your weaknesses, to honestly speak the truth, to say things to people. Yeah, I think that's also something impressive and to be proud of. Yeah.
Thanks.
That's something I've never had a problem with usually. So
okay.
I have a big problem.
Mine was kind of the opposite problem, which was that I think I really like playing the provocateur and I really like pushing people's buttons. That used to get me in trouble at like work. We'd be sitting there and there'd be someone and I'd say to someone, so if you had to choose between being nice and being honest, which one would you choose? And he'd be like, being nice. And I'd be like, you're an idiot, man. That's the wrong answer.
Here's another question. Would you rather be strong or look strong? Right? It's like, would you rather have big biceps or actually be strong? I think a lot of people would say have big biceps.
Yeah.
It really astounds me the differences in answers you can get, because I think, I don't know. There seems like there's a right answer for everything in our culture, and that's something I've had to deal with a lot, is this insistence on having the right answer all the time. But the provocateur thing is something while stepping away from, I do need to pay attention to what that impulse is and what good is there is in it. I think Jung says something like the trickster is the precursor to the savior, and there's something in being able to offend people in a
upbuilding.
Yeah, in it. There's an artful way to offend people.
Yeah.
And that's
it's a hard line, I think, too.
Well, that's why you get paid so much money, right? If they're good.
And yeah, it depends what you mean, I guess. Because like being a provocateur in the sense of pointing out truths to other people that they might not want to hear is something that's so essential in a community or in a relationship. Mm-hmm. So like how is that different from being a provocateur in a positive sense? If you know what I mean, if you know the distinction I'm making, like speaking the truth and being a provocateur, like
I guess it depends on the truth that needs to be spoken, because I might be just making this up, or I might fail to find examples, but I think there are some truths which you can arrive at through like vulnerability and opening up. I think there are other truths where it's best to hold up a mirror to someone. And I mean, I don't know if this is just me, but I really respond to that. When someone makes a little bit of a fool of me, like that's painful. And if I look in, if I'm like, why was I so annoyed about the way that guy said that thing? It tends to drive me to look in more inwardly, and then I arrive at these answers. But I think it requires a certain disposition to do that well. I'm still figuring this out though.
I'm very like the opposite. Like I don't ever want to like I just want to allow people to like come to their own realizations about themselves a lot of the time, and like be more of like a listener and like a gentle kind of like, exploring thoughts maybe, but not like harsh, like let me show you your
yeah.
Do you think there's a danger in allowing people too much liberty to do their own?
Yeah, I think you're teaching me that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm more like Kacey in this regard. In so many of these things, I find both parts in me. There's a provocateur in me, and then there's a different side of me that just wants to
shepherd,
be gentle and try to be a good example and speak honestly. Yeah, it's so tricky. I was talking with someone on the Discord. Maybe it was today or yesterday. I'm not sure. Like if you take something like spreading the gospel, I am not at all comfortable with like the sort of evangelical thing where you're like, okay, you're a sinner and you need Jesus Christ to come inside of your heart and fix all of your problems. Like, I just can't do it that way. So what I try to do instead is be more subtle and subversive about it.
Yeah. I think Kacey and I've particularly been very impressed with the way you've interacted with us, the both of us, and like I think the way that you've introduced us to, it's almost as if you paid very close attention to what our particular needs were at this moment in time, not what you thought we should be hearing, but what perhaps we needed. And there was just a few instances where you presented the right bit of content at the right time to me, and things clicked. Like you know what I mean? There are a few click moments. Like you sent us the documentary of the Hutterite community that opened up this new awareness to what life could be like outside of the modern bubble. There was the particular episode of the Vivek's meaning crisis on how salience and finding truth lined up, and that was really instrumental for both of us. And then the Drew Johnson stuff on the research around how ritual and habit is key. And that all kind of lined up for us in a really interesting way. So we think you're a bit of a gift.
I'll just want that to Providence, because I don't know if I don't know if I was like that attentive, or I mean I don't know if I would like, I wouldn't like to say like I was so keyed in on what you guys did that I was able to interject the right I don't think a lot of this stuff is things I'm interested as well, and right. I think part of what happened is I sort of saw us on a similar wavelength, and that's like part of the reason I was able to give you stuff you were interested in or found helpful. So yeah,
that's good. Yeah, we're really grateful though. I'm grateful for the entire Discord community that's starting to grow, and I think the conversations we were having earlier were super interesting. We're noticing this kind of split. How did you characterize it? Because you added this extra dimension to the split, which is the people who are aware of the split and the people who are. Can you
I sort of see sort of a split developing where you have people who are aware that there are different modes of being, that there is like I guess it's people who have really internalized what Peugeot, Peterson, Vervaeke are talking about. The difference between participatory and propositional. Peugeot has his own, the difference between the world is a form for action. The world is a space of objects.
Right.
The left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, the having mode and the being mode. The right hemisphere, did I say that already? Heaven and earth,
Yeah. Male and female. This is what we
God and man. These dualisms.
Mm-hmm.
This very much feels like what we experienced when we met. This was this. You were talking about the symmetry. We feel that that's part of the entire the same thing.
Yeah. That's what really came out when I read Kacey's piece, was like this moment at the mirror where she's looking out and she's looking back at the same time, and this is this sort of this dualism which creates this liminal incarnational space where new life happens. And that's the moment.
You're seeing that in it.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was like a Delphic oracle moment where you'd taken Kacey's story and it just like the interpretation was so beautiful. We were so thrilled to read that.
It's quite amazing to. I was telling this to Kacey. I just can't comprehend how you can write a narrative and just have all of these layers coming together, and then like these interconnected, interwoven themes, and like having to take care of like each individual word and and then the sentences have to match up with the word, and then the sentences in the paragraphs, and it's just so layered. And
what's so funny is that like I don't think of it that way, so like it's all very like it just is what it is. Like and like that thing I think I sent you about like a form emerges as you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I was like, I need to like weave all these little pieces together and like craft these sentences, even though I think I have a good feeling for sentences and rhythm and stuff. But like, it's not like some big effort where I'm like this mastermind. Like it just kind of
and it's just it's and then the amazing thing is that people can read it and then figure out what she's getting at, and then just start this whole conversation that leads into so many different directions, even directions beyond what the author knew she was intending in the beginning. It's profound. It almost seems like a new this incarnational moment space. It seems like it's in a way happening when you read it, sort of. There's the text and there's you, and then something comes into being. Or the author is writing the piece, and then something greater than she imagines comes into. Wow.
Have you tried reading it where the male character that's included is if you read that as God, and you read the transition from the second to the third section as death, is that's interesting too. I think that was last time.
That's something you did.
That was just me. That was just something I kind of picked up on. We can do that another time. But what do you think the biggest barrier is for people who are kind of stuck in their rationalist frame? And that's the assumption that they need to step out of it as well, which perhaps you might have thoughts on.
It's the assumption that you can rationally describe everything. Luke says this all the time. You can't tell a person who doesn't see it what they should be seeing. They need the eyes to see. Something needs to change. I don't know what I even think someone could intellectually grasp the difference, but not know what the difference is. Because, I don't know what it is exactly.
It's so paradoxical, isn't it?
Yeah, it's here you go.
I don't know. Well, that's, I mean, one of the, I guess this is probably really typical of this, you know, internet man from 2019 or digital. People who watch Joe Rogan, for example, like I took a crazy amount of psychedelics, and I don't mean that like over a period of time. I meant like one dose. Yeah. And I got it from a friend who was, he styled himself as a kind of a shaman of sorts, and he's very into the kind of Eastern philosophy, Alan Watts, but he thinks religion's all, you know, and is all about power structures and whatever. But he is an insightful guy, and he hooked me up with these psilocybin mushrooms, and I got up at dawn one day after fasting, and I took 5 grams of them, and then I meditated for the day. And
Whoa!
it was like firsthand experience that revealed to me that I don't know nothing. That was it. I was like, well, I have no idea what box to put that in, and that was enough for me to know that there was a beyond that you could experience somehow. And then I was listening to some Sam Harris stuff, and I mean, the experience that I had was very profound, and I felt like I died and went to. I'm just gonna get rid of the cat. Yeah.
Okay. That, wow.
So,
and now we have a cat video.
Automatically the best video. Yeah.
That is, yeah. Mm-hmm. You guys have to tell me your story also.
Oh, wow. What does that mean?
I don't know.
I'm speaking to Job on Monday. Maybe you and Kacey should have a conversation one-on-one about Kacey's story. I can speak to Job.
Well, we could talk about your story together in this conversation.
That would be good, actually.
Yeah. But I want to hear more about psychedelics.
All right. Okay. So well, the experience for me was you sit there, you meditate, things start to melt away, and then the next thing I know, I was kind of in a tunnel with a great white, golden, creamy light enveloping me. And that's all there was. And I was the light, and the light was me. And it went on forever. And it was as loud as it was silent. And it was, it's very hard to make sense of. But the next thing I remember was being born in my body again and receiving agency, and kind of being like, okay, I have free will and autonomy. And that's a big deal. That's a really big deal, because it was rediscovering that again. And then I went to see a friend, and we were just having a great time. Just couldn't stop laughing about everything, and everything was great. But the whole experience to me was indicative of a beyond, something else that I couldn't make sense of. So whilst I couldn't put it in a box, I didn't need to, and that was always a kind of question mark. Mm-hmm. And as long as that question mark was there, I was going to be more open than I would have been in a previous kind of state of being. And and then reading about Sam Harris, he's talking about meditation and how if you the mind of someone who's got about 1,000 to 10,000 hours of meditation, the brain activity is very similar to someone who's on 5 grams of psychedelics, for example. So I started asking questions there about what does that mean, and and ever since it's been a kind of journey. Jordan Peterson acknowledges psychedelics. I think most people do acknowledge that there's something about them that we don't understand. And that was one of my ways into accepting the mystical as being very real.
What do you make of, or how do you think about people like Harris or Vervaeke who try to sort of reduce these experiences or reduce the spiritual to being part of the material? Like, do you have any way of thinking about sort of the reductive accounts you'd hear from someone like Sam Harris, or?
Yeah, I think a comedian called Hannibal Buress put it really well when he called Sam Harris a human PowerPoint presentation. That's how I feel about most of his stuff. It's like he's super switched on, and if I need to understand the neurological inner workings of the brain, I'll go to him. But like his explanation for these things isn't satisfying. It doesn't feel satisfying, and that's, I don't think that's a case of needing to hear a happy story. It's a case of certainty. I'm scared of certainty in some cases. There's just some areas where someone says they have the answers. I kind of, no, thank you.
Yep.
I'd rather you say you didn't know, because I'm not satisfied with your explanation. And there's so many cases where science, the people I speak to who, like my friends, I'll say, well, what happened before the Big Bang? And they'll say, well, I don't know, but I'm sure there are scientists somewhere has an explanation for it. And I said, well, that seems like an act of faith. It's not that it inevitably becomes an act of faith at some point in the materialist scientific explanation. And that's just always jarred me. So yeah, and again, it's a case of being able to separate the wheat from the chaff. And yeah, I don't know. But I think Kacey, what about your?
Yeah.
Because you really don't like my certainty when we met. That was you had a version to that, I think.
Yeah. I feel like uncertainty is one of my key principles.
Yeah, gotcha.
You taught me how to embrace uncertainty with a move to Sacramento. Why don't you just start telling our story?
Telling our story.
Yeah, I would love to hear that.
Just like, all right, how we met and how all of this happened.
Yeah.
Okay. We met at a news association conference in Austin, Texas.
Oh, I can't believe you didn't meet in a cafe.
No, I had already written that part of the story.
Oh, wow.
Before we met. So
yeah, I think you told me the first time you said something that didn't line up with what your story, what your piece and Medium was. Like, I was a bit disappointed because I was like, oh, I thought this was like actually.
What's so crazy is I feel like the elements that aren't like strictly autobiographical are almost like part of the thing, where it's like, did I make this happen by writing this story of me meeting this person? Or like, was this like it, like it's just so hard to make sense of.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, but
so we met.
Yeah, we met. He was there, so he was there from London, and I was there from Sacramento.
Yeah.
Well, I had seen Kacey around the conference a little bit, and I was like, she looks really cute. She seems really nice. And there was something to your eyes that was like, it was like you were looking for something meaningful almost. Like you had this openness and this kind of weird way of moving around.
Which is so funny. Like, what I was doing was walking around a party by myself. Just like, yeah, I was like open, looking for like meaningful connection, and there was just not a lot happening.
Glance at the door. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then I was sat in one of the opening talks, and it was from a group called Data and Society, and they were doing an analysis on the alternative influence network, which was basically the IDW. And she was talking about Jordan Peterson was the revivification of alt-right patriarchal male domination, and we need to be really scared of it. And there's this room of 2,000 people nodding along, and I'm super hungover at this point, so I stand up and I said to my boss, I'm not listening to any more of this lady. I'm just gonna go outside. So I went outside, and Kacey was just stood on her own, So I like slid over and was like, "What's up, baby?" But yeah, I introduced myself, and like we started having a conversation, and I was kind of saying like, it's really interesting being here as a Brit and as a bit of a conservative, because everyone in journalism and media at the time in Austin, Texas, is just a priori pretty progressive, pretty liberal.
Oh, you started your conversation talking about politics.
No, I think it was about Hemingway
Well,
and Woolf first, and then we went into politics.
How did he, what?
No, our very first conversation was just like very brief, like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he did mention like being a conservative, which I at the time was a little like, "Ooh, I don't know."
I guess for me, it's like, all right, I better let them know that, you know, I'm a leper, because not later on they might not talk to me. So yeah.
But then the next day there was another party. Yeah, and I was once again, because I was there by myself at the conference, like no one else from my work was there, and I was just like wandering around, circling this place, like waiting for something to happen. And then I saw you again and recognized each other from the other day, and that's where we started. Like it was like very quickly the conversation just went from like like deeper and like just stuff that was very like, it was like who can say the most meaningful, vulnerable thing.
Wow.
And then by the end of the night, I was crying, talking about my relationship to my mother. You know, it was like, all right, this needed to come out for some reason. Like, and it was like this really weird, just, we were like this.
It was just like, I mean, and this is how they describe falling in love, like boundaries collapse.
Mutual self-disclosure, right? That's what Viveki says. He says love is mutual self-disclosure.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. It was like, all right, here's all the crap I have. Here's all my cards are on the table, ugly stuff too. And it was...
And I wasn't really sharing any of that.
No, I wasn't.
Open vessel, kind of like, I don't know why I was just so open to you. And like...
Well, you were very, I guess, Mary-like in that way. Mm-hmm. You were this open space room, you know, finally enter and be safe in, and that allowed me to like start doing some interesting stuff for myself and with the relationship. And
because you said like you felt like you were getting back in touch with like the child, and you were like these parts of you that you had stuffed away, and were kind of like almost like getting to a bad place with your rejection of yourself, like your true self, not your self. Like,
I was got to the stage where I was telling myself that my like spiritual ambitions were naive. You know, the voice of the world, or what Daniel Quinn calls mother culture, the voice of mother culture as opposed to mother nature, and this like whispering thing in your ear telling you to ignore certain impulses and certain feelings, I guess, because, you know, you go to work, you have a career, you go to the pub at the weekend and drink with your friends and feel terrible on Sunday, and it's just what you do. And, you know, any lofty ideas you have of changing the world ought to be quelled and squashed.
Yeah.
And I guess potential. It was potential when we met. It was just this overwhelming sense of potential for the world. I mean, we should dig out some of the messages we were sending each other, because they were so. When I sent you a Bible quote, I think, the Romans 12:2 is like, no longer conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to understand what God's will truly is. Or I'm probably going to butcher it, but it was, that quote has been kind of part of my psyche for a long time, even though I haven't really been a Christian. And and
this was like, so we had 2 days together, like just ended up spending the whole time, and like it was just this crazy, like we were just like fully convinced, basically, right, that this was something.
Well, it was, there was no conflict to it. It was like, right, we've met, we live on other sides of the world, this is our lot, and we're going to deal with it, and we're going to see how this can work, because I'm not walking away from it, and you were thrilled, I guess, when you heard that.
Yeah. I was,
Wow.
Yeah. And then we immediately had to spend 3 months apart. So we communicated like all day, every day via text message and phone calls. And
Product must have been a productive time for both of you.
yeah. Yeah. And it was like our reasoning had to catch up to how we were feeling about the whole thing. So it was like this intuitive, and then we were like, are we fucking insane? Like, what are we like?
Yeah.
And like, it just, but then the more we talked and the more we actually got to know one another, it was like just astounding that like the depth of our connection on so many different levels, and the way that we're mirrored in this weird way and interested in all these same ideas and things. We're the same age, like
exactly.
So many weird little things, like his last name being Sycamore, and I've always had this thing about trees, and like
wow.
So many, like, of course I'm this person who like sees signs and everything, but
of course. So there was a lot of trying to make sense of whether we were seeing relevance in places that it wasn't there, or if there was something special happening that we hadn't been able to entertain.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the 3 months. And then that I was having a really tough time. My work situation was becoming untenable. The lack of meaning I had around it was difficult for me to deal with, especially as I thought it was going to be the dream job. It was going to be where I get to bring all of my unique skills and experiences, and it's my passion, and it just didn't turn out that way at all for me. And I got really depressed by the time. So Kacey came to London in December for a week at the beginning of December, and we drank ourselves silly. We partied with all my friends, and then the last night before you went away, we partied so hard that I actually I went to hospital the next day because I had like a panic attack.
He was in a bad place. It was like the most tangible emotional pain that I've ever felt.
It was turmoil. It was turmoil.
It was oppressive, dread.
Anguish is the word I would say. And it was like, in retrospect, it was like God had grabbed me and said, if you want me to keep doing this to you, I can keep going. You know, like, you need to stop. And then that was after you left back and came home, we said, where do we go from here? And Kacey kind of said, I have a crazy idea. Why don't you come to Sacramento? Because London sucks.
Wow.
Like the atmosphere, like especially I think if you're in that dark place, like it's like very like the sky hangs low, and like the buildings are like very like enclosed.
Gothic.
Yeah, it just felt like I even felt, and I was probably feeding off of it, and I was like, I can't like catch my breath here. Like there's no like sky, and I don't know. I was just like, you gotta get it out there.
The fast-paced, capitalist, consumerist, multicultural environment is like, there's no community. There's a lot of people stepping on each other. It's like if you can get the subway train 1 minute earlier, but you have to throw a child under a bus to do it, you will do it. It's that kind of place.
Yeah.
Just, So I flew out here on Christmas Day, and the person's name who served me breakfast in the airport was Jesus. I still have the receipt. I have the receipt name and everything. It was really strange. So I flew out here, and I watched It's a Wonderful Life starring Jimmy Stewart on the plane, and I cried. And
you like basically, well, you didn't really quit your job, but adjusted, like left his in-person work role for a remote role, like moved, like just left his life essentially to move here.
All my friends, family, whatever, I just followed but that was the bit where Kacey taught me about uncertainty. I don't know what magic words you managed to say, combined with the fact I was just in such a dark place, that you just said, just come here, we'll figure everything out. And that was a big leap of faith. And since then I've been so comfortable with uncertainty. Like my anxiety is probably reduced down to 25% of what it was before. And that was one of the biggest lessons I've learned, was to trust in what we now know as God and providence. And and since being here, it's just been nonstop growth. And
every single day it's like exhausting. We're just like engaged in some sort of growth experience, like learning and fighting and
we're never not talking about our development. Never.
There seems to be such a vitality or something between the two of you.
I think so too. Like people notice that when there's like such a warmth. Like there was that lady who approached us in the coffee shop. It was like, you guys seem really interesting. Can I be your friend? It's weird. It's weird, kind of like what do you call it? Like a double act.
Double act.
Yeah. So we've toyed with the idea of kind of leveraging that into a YouTube show, for example. Like exploring the space between, basically, is something we're looking at doing.
Wow. Yeah.
So like setting a model for relationships, and moving from the, I call it like the preliminal life into the liminal one, and hopefully with the.
But it's interesting that like this Discord has kind of emerged too, and like being in Sacramento where Paul is. By the way, we didn't know anything about Paul. He just happened to be here in Sacramento, and like.
So that's I guess let's.
So your first encounter with Paul was actually in real life instead of through YouTube.
Yes, that's right. It was.
Wow.
Because in London, I was running a IDW meetup, and I'd met some really interesting folks that way. And it's really interesting because the meetup got co-opted by this very strange guy when I left. That's a really interesting story. But as soon as what happened with the IDW meetup was that this notion of being IDW became crystallized. And it was always happening around like, this person isn't like us, or that person's too left wing, and like we shouldn't let them come and hang out with us. And that was when I kind of went, right, you can't give anything a name, because it's gonna crystallize and then shatter when it gets. So that happened. So when I came to Sacramento, I was looking for another bunch of deplorables to kind of spend time with, and I realized there was a JVP meetup. So I went along and I met Joey, Tyler, a few of the other guys, and Paul. And then I was just kind of keeping tabs on Paul and sending him the occasional nonsensical email here and there. And that's been kind of that was like what happened. And then when I saw the Discord thing get started, I was like, okay, I can interact with this, because I think I particularly have been very reclusive, because I've been increasingly more aware about my own biases and my own, I had a pretty rough childhood, and I'm only just coming around to realizing how a lot of those experiences have caused me to exhibit certain social behaviors I'm not happy with, that I think are a bit unskillful and maybe ego driven. And that, whilst not really understanding how they work, I've been aware that that's something that impacts my ability to connect with people. So I've kind of taken like a gracious step back from it, whilst still needing this connection, but knowing that I kind of have a bit of work to do, let's say. And I guess the dark side of that coin is that I tell myself that, people don't like me very much, and that I shouldn't be interacting with people, but obviously that's not quite true. And the Discord server has been really good at kind of bringing me out of that and reaching out through the digital realm and kind of teasing out this humanity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you do that incredibly well on the Discord. You're just one of those people who always pulls things out Yeah, you pull things out of people and you start conversations, and you're so incredibly active in the writers thing even. Like, I find that impressive because just of the way you're putting the time in to read what other people have written. I think that's it's impressive.
There's
Yeah.
the Confucian notion that everyone is your teacher and student. You just need to figure out what can you extract from what they have to say, and what do you have that they might need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
That's such an art, and one I really want to try and cultivate, because it's just the value in that is clear, right? It's right there. So yeah, thanks for saying so. That's it's really affirming to hear that. But that's kind of the story, I guess.
I have a question for Kacey. Like, you said, like, when you first met, you sort of clashed a bit over because Benedict says he's a conservative, and you're like, yeah, creepy conservatives. Like, how do you feel about this IDW thing he's part of, and then he goes to Sacramento and he joins this Jordan Peterson club? Like, where are you in this whole thing?
So when we first parted after Austin, and I sent him like almost immediately this huge long message about my fears around his political stances and like being involved in these groups, and like, I don't know, like, I know I don't know a lot about this, but this is what I've heard. And like, I was very, in my particular little, like, I didn't know about the IDW, and I only knew Jordan Peterson because of like what I've read about him in the New York Times or whatever. So I was worried about it. But he like just sent me like the loveliest response, which was like,
we'll figure it out.
And like, my heart, like, think about what all that I showed you over the last couple of days, like, that's who I am. Like,
yeah.
Trust in that. Like, politics is politics, and if we never come to agree on that stuff, like, that doesn't really matter. But I have faith that we're going to be able to come to some sort of understanding, and I think we really have. And it's taken, well, I wouldn't say we're all the way there, but it's taken, I think I've come around a lot to seeing things through a more balanced and wider perspective, and just pulled back from like politics in general and from media in general. I don't anymore have any like disparaging or thought about Jordan Peterson or about the IDW, because I now like have so much faith in my own ability to discern what's valuable and what's not. And like, there's no reason why I have to take anything anyone says wholesale and like be like, I'm a fan and hold the flag, you know?
Yeah. I think from what I've seen in the Jordan Peterson IDW circles, there's this tribal tendency a lot of the times where you have these tribal markers, and if you have someone who's talking about things the tribe doesn't approve of, then you have this ostracism kicking in. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember I was on Paul Vanderklay's show and I talked about postmodernism, that were immediately like a bunch of Peterson fans who were just triggered by that.
But that's the spirit of the IDW, and the thing I said about Confucianism is that, like, there's the postmodernists that, like, incredibly tedious stuff most of the time, but if you've got a sense of curiosity, you can actually find that they have these slightly salient points that you can, if you extract the pattern from what they're saying outside of the political or historical kind of contingents that they refer to, you can find something that you can apply to your own reality that is really useful. It's a really useful psychotechnology you can extract, but it just requires a certain level of curiosity and modesty, and in order to do that, which is hard.
I mean, in the conversation I had with Paul, I think like the stuff we were talking about, I don't know if that's necessarily what postmodernism is, but that's, I think, stuff that, like, for the three of us, that's stuff that's self-evidently true. Like, we need formational liturgies. Things are uncertain. What was the last one? I don't remember, but it just strikes me that some people weren't able to listen to what I was saying
Yeah.
because they were getting triggered by the postmodernism thing.
Right.
And at the same time, one thing I've noticed in myself is, I had this conversation with Luke, which you posted on the randos about the, how did you put it? The rationalist ideologues. And I realized that that's actually the same kind of thing where, we were talking earlier about the people who sort of notice the split and the people who don't. And you can turn that into another box, and you can call the people who don't notice the split these rationalist ideologues, and then it turns into this John Vervaeke salience thing where you sort of have this. So you put the frame irrationalist ideologue on someone, and so everything that's irrationalist ideological about them suddenly becomes salient, and then this okay, so you're this rationalist ideologue, so this feeds back into my perception, and now I continue to see more and more and more and more, and soon things about the person that don't fit the mold, because this is just a mold, this is just a simple way of understanding it, it's a gestalt, it's and what you have to do is continuously, Vervaeke talks also about this, you have the gestalt, and then you have the sort of the sea of potential. You have to continuously update the gestalt with the potential, come back, up, down, yeah. And what happens when you have this label like a rationalist ideologue that's at the center of your existence is you project it onto a person, then you can't see the person anymore. You can just see the rationalist ideologue, who you can't talk to because he's a rationalist ideologue, right? It's like the postmodern neo-Marxist thing.
Yeah.
This guy's a postmodern neo-Marxist. You can't talk with a postmodern neo-Marxist. So what's the point? Just call him a postmodern neo-Marxist and don't listen to him.
I was falling prey to that kind of thinking when we met. There'd be times where I would say, these leftists, these bloody leftists,
Yeah, I mean,
who are you talking about? Are you talking about this group of people, that group of people?
You're talking about Kacey, or yeah, right. I mean, this is a real person, and I saw exactly the same thing with this irrationalist ideologue thing, which is a helpful shorthand because there are people who do exhibit that pattern. So, but you just spend the whole day ranting about these rationalist ideologues, and where was I going with this? You also miss the fact that there are things the rationalist ideologues are saying, or the social justice warriors are saying, that you can find helpful.
Right. And the thing that I think is like one of my big passions or hopes, I guess, is to bring seemingly adversarial groups together to have a conversation in a way, and I'm trying to figure out what the best technology for doing that is, because if I look at people that I really don't agree with, I don't agree with their solutions, but we're all noticing the same problems. We're all noticing that something isn't okay, and the way we're talking about it, we can find common ground. Like, for example, I'm trying to think of any examples, but we've kind of been going through a few where we realize that even though it seems like the leftists and the rightists are talking about different problems, they're noticing the same things. It's like crony capitalism, or the establishment taking advantage of people, or these kind of things. It's like these points of these linchpins for common references are kind of emerging to me, and I want to find more ways to talk about these universally these universal problems that we all have. There's something in there that we're just not. I don't think we're being generous enough with each other's intentions and motivations. Like, it's
at the same time, just to burst your balloon a bit, go back to the room at the conference where you have these thousands of, 2,000 people or so just clapping along with a guy who's talking about how Jordan Peterson is a neo-Nazi or whatever. And the thing is, you've watched more videos from Jordan Peterson than anyone in the room, and you know what they're saying isn't true.
Right.
What do you what do you do with that? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question.
I'm trying to pay attention so much to the process that I went through, like to try to figure out like, what is the important thing that had to happen in me to because there was so much. Like I was genuinely fearful of like I don't like now thinking back, it's like what was I afraid of? Like did I really not trust myself that much? Yeah.
But, the social pressure.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It is, yeah. I noticed this this political correctness. This is such a dead word at this point, but just this, these accepted things and ways of talking, everyone assumes it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Right. I notice that so often in myself, like, whoa, you can't say that. And you'll have people, when you, I think this is something Paul has probably talked about. Like when you're in a part of a community of people you care about, who don't see things the same way you do, who are maybe have a narrower perspective than you do, you can't live in this politically correct world, because all you end up doing is judging people and saying you're lesser than I am because you happen to not use the same words, because you grew up in a different context, because you were exposed to less information. It just, you can't deal with people. You have to, it's such a dehumanizing thing, really, because let's all get into this lab coat, white clean room and say all the nice things and use this technocratic language.
There's this overt need to colonize people as well. I noticed, like I've had experiences where, like I've met someone who's been vaguely aware that I'm just not on the same party boat as everyone else when it comes to the PC stuff. And the first thing is to kind of, educate me. It's like, well, these people are like that because they're straight white men, Ben. And, I don't know about your country, but we have a terrible problem with racism here. It's everywhere. It's, and so there's like this need to explain if someone doesn't have the correct
advice. I think you can see that vice versa. Like, I think the IDW people exhibit the same kind of thing where, yeah. I can't come up with an example right now, but they do it. They do it for sure. Where, if I would say something, for example, about white privilege, and someone would say, "Oh, that's not a thing you're supposed to be saying. There's actually not such a thing as white privilege. We should treat everyone like individuals."
There's something in it. That's the thing.
There's something in it. There's something in it.
Might not be very helpful language, because there's wrapped up in something, but it still refers to a very real phenomena that people can feel, and they feel it when they look outside. So there's this sense of like, don't use this language, but then at the same time, by telling people you're not allowed to use things like white privilege because it's so problematic, you're not allowing them to use any language. You're basically saying the thing that they're feeling doesn't exist, and that really winds people up. So it's kind of, I see it as like people in the IDW, it's their job to figure out what are they referring to when they say unhelpful things like white privilege or toxic masculinity, and then like generously deconstruct that for them and give them and find some more helpful language.
And are you writing people off who use that type of language? Is another, right? I mean, can you deal with a person who uses the type of language, be it right-wing language or left-wing language? Can you deal with a person and not get hung up on these tribal markers, which is such a difficult thing to do? Because at the same time, you have to hold these things in tension. These you have to have some kind of a gestalt of who the person is. You have to sort of have a sense of who this guy is, but you can never let this solidify. You have to always get back to the potential and dynamic, incarnational. That's what That's what it always is.
Yeah, I say exactly the same thing about Stalin. You know, don't write him off. He could be a really nice guy. You just gotta get to know him.
Oh yeah, I do think there are limits to free speech.
Yeah, it's something I fall prey to. I'm very judgmental. I'm very comfortable with being judgmental. It's how I get by. I like to do it. Makes me feel like a good man, you know. It does. It makes me feel good about myself. I'm like, that's like this. This is like that.
Flex my skinny muscles.
Come on, man.
I have skinny muscles too, so I can make fun of people with skinny muscles.
I used to be quite overweight, actually.
Really?
Yeah, food is something we both have a bit of a interesting relationship with.
We like our junk food.
Not just like we like to have a donut every now and then. It's like we like to go and raid the local supermarket for like $15 worth of like junior mints, and then we eat them all in one evening. It's like untenable. Right? We've been talking about how to get around that, and it's by ritualizing the treat.
Well,
time and a place and a ceremonious relationship with the treat, and you still get to have the treat, but it's not chaos everywhere and just
taking you over. Yeah, it's a treat and not your. Yeah, the treat is something that has its special place. Yeah, and time. Yeah, I guess what you could do is just not buy stuff you don't think is healthy.
Yeah. No.
I mean, the thing is, like, you have these 30 minutes of temptation at the supermarket, and then you get home and there's like the rest of the day or the rest of the week that you don't have to worry about. Mm-hmm. So that would probably be helpful.
I'm okay, but it's like we also like we just keep on eating sneezes, so like we'll be totally fine, and then we'll be like, you know what, like let's just go a little crazy today. And then it's just like, well, like we just get into the habit again, and just it's okay. We can just get a little dessert.
Like yeah.
And then it's been like 7 days in a row where we've eaten dessert.
Yeah, my behavior up until recently has been like I was a party animal. I mean, like
me too.
I could put away a lot of alcohol, several days, including drugs. Like that was just part and parcel of being a trendy young professional in London. You know, friends are all into rock and roll and interest in music, and everyone's very cool. So that kind of binge behavior is very much part of my DNA in a way. I say DNA, I don't really mean at a fundamental level, but a kind of behavioral level, behavioral DNA. Yeah, so that's something that like we both have to manage, and again, I guess we need to find an outlet for that which is well, I think
carnival. Yeah,
carnival. There you go. I was about to say the traditional, the carnival-esque. You know, and in the UK, like we do that with football. You go to the soccer match every week, and you drink from about 10 a.m. till a match at 2, and you scream obscenities, like the worst things you could ever say about another human being, and you scream them at people because they're wearing a different color. So we get it all out, and then the rest of the week we're like, hello, how do you do? Very well, thank you. Yes. Like, but it's just at the football ground. It's just carnival. It's the carnival-esque. It's and children are there, and they're privy to the whole experience too. And there's something to be said for ritualizing the darker impulses you have. And
it's like Peugeot. Like his diagnosis of the current situation is that you've sort of taken the periphery and put it in the center. Yeah, sort of what your party thing reminded me of is like when you're having this party every day, it's like the edge has gotten into the middle, and that's dysfunctional, I guess.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Glad we're not there anymore.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I bet that just sounds so, should I say, nihilistic looking back even? Is that the right word?
Bleak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just lost. It was just lost.
Yeah.
There is something about the party scene. I don't know if it's always been like this, but today that's just so bleak and empty and nihilistic.
Well, what's interesting to me, and this is probably getting into more of the postmodern territory, so fair warning out there.
Trigger. Oh, what is this? This is a trigger warning. Yeah.
Scary ideas. There's this sense that like you're doing something rebellious, but the rebellion is packaged up and consumerized.
Yeah.
You're given rebellion as a package, and that's not rebellious at all. Like you're being told how to dress. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like you look at hipsters now, and they all look the same. It's
Listen to my conversation I had with Joey and Tyler.
yeah, that's the recent one, right?
Yeah, we sort of talked about that where what like sort of this corporatizing of everything. Like what's happened is like they were talking about, it's just something I have no experience of, but like when the corporations will sort of, let's have this office event where we have a run and donate to charity, and it's like exercise, good cause, what else is there, community, but it's all been completely unmoored from any kind of communal context, and it's now been commercialized. You also see this really in you saw this the uptick of this a while back, maybe a couple of years ago, maybe, where commercials now start taking this social justice edge, where it's like I think Pepsi had this conversation where there was this rally, and then they were handing out Pepsis, and it's like, if you buy our product, you will save the earth and be a social justice person.
Mm-hmm.
I like there was like a meme that I hate talking about memes, but it was hello fellow gays. That's what the corporations are like. Like they slap a rainbow sticker on everything, and they do a bit of that, and all of a sudden it's. But the thing is, people are all up for this. They think it's the sign of progress that the corporations are coming around to their way of thinking. And
yeah.
It's like, do you really think that if this didn't make them money, that they would still continue?
Watch it flip, and then watch how fast the corporations will flip.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing I'm noticing, is that I think there was a recent Apple ad where there was this slight Petersonian tinge to the message about like I don't know, that I'm going to pay more attention to it, and I think advertising and marketing is something I should probably do more analysis of, because it was my bread and butter for 7 years, like doing public relations and in technology and politics, and it's just unbelievable how like you said, how quickly they will flip.
And and what I was talking about this in the conversation I had with Matt and Robert. They're both on the Discord about Kierkegaard. I hope this gets on the Rando's channel, because that was just the most fun conversation I've had in a while. It was just like meeting of.
Is that Matt?
Yeah, Matt Nelson and this Robert guy. I don't even remember his last name.
I don't think I've interacted with him, but how was the conversation?
It was amazing. So we took sickness unto death, and then we tried to sort of go through it paragraph by paragraph, and we got to the second paragraph. But the conversation went into all kinds of Kierkegaardian rabbit holes. It was amazing.
So are you finding that the conversations are starting to become more energized?
What do you mean? Yeah.
There seems to be this, I wouldn't even call it frenetic, but there's this exciting energy that seems to be emerging from the Discord, at least. And and I'm having so many more conversations. Like they're exponentially increasing. Like there's people every day who want to have a conversation. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this. This is the first conversation I've done, and I'm not as terrified about it as I thought I would be.
I've been looking forward to it all day, so this is great.
It's
but
so good.
The point I was gonna make from bringing up, we can talk about Kierkegaard too. That would be an interesting rabbit hole. But this documentary, Century of the Self, which is have you watched it at all? Actually,
No, I've heard of it. It was.
Oh, you would love it, I'm sure. So what they explore there is how corporations took the ideas of Sigmund Freud about the unconscious and then sort of exploited that through advertising.
Is that
and yeah, that name rings a bell. And what's fascinating is, so when was the hippie movement? In the 70s or the 80s or 70s, something like that.
Yeah.
So they were all anti-capitalist, fight the big guy, start this alternative movement. What made them fizzle out was the fact that the corporations were targeting their radical individualism. They were like, these are people who love self-expression, who love to be these radical individuals. So let's start targeting the individual with our products. And they just turned the hippie generation into consumers.
It's terrifying, really.
Yeah,
it's like cannibalization. It's this co-opting of these messages that, yeah. Do you worry about where our thread is going in this? Do you think that we are sufficiently inoculated intellectually? No. And do you think that the Paul Vanderklay phenomena and the Discord and the direction it's going in, do you think it's ever going to receive the same kind of vitriol and attention that Jordan Peterson has from the mainstream media?
I have no idea. I guess at some point when it runs away from us, it could. I mean, when it just gets too big and takes it on a whole life of its own and stops doing this. There's upwelling is another way of thinking. You know what pawns do? The problem with the
Pawns.
Pawns.
Talking about pawns, man. I'm from London. Yeah, I ain't seen a pond in years.
They do this upwelling where they take they go down and take stuff up.
Right.
And and if it doesn't happen, it starts getting stagnant and dies.
Yes.
I think that's what makes a pond a swamp.
We were talking yesterday that I think that this community has a really great way of self-regulating itself. Like, I'm noticing that, just from the way I'm engaging with it, it seems I'm regulating the way I'm engaging with it based on the kind of the feelings I'm getting from other people, and I think it has this self-regulating power to it, because we were talking yesterday and we were saying that other internet communities aren't like this. No, and technology on the Discord service, it's kind of like a mental asylum, and full of really trolls.
Why do you think that is? Like, what distinguishes this? It seems like it could just as easily at any moment, like, be just like any other.
It's like, if you harkening back to my tech years, that if you're a manufacturing company and you buy massive amounts of automation equipment, you could make things worse based on if you have terrible processes and then you try and automate them, things get really, really bad really quickly. But if your processes are kind of healthy and then you automate them, you get an increase in efficiency.
Sorry, I need to go to the bathroom.
Oh, go ahead. We can take a break.
Yeah.
You don't have this with you, are you?
Just a second. we go. All better now.
Don't ask me questions.
Ben is getting a drink of water.
Oh, I should do that too. Yeah. My tea is done. You know, one thing we could talk about is our conversation on art and reality, which I think ties into what Ben was saying about, you know, the people who see the split and the people who don't see the split. And Kacey and I were having a conversation a while back about where we started on art and reality and what makes art more true than true or more real than real.
I see. I had a thing like a hang on. There was one thing that the notion I had, which was that it's the job of every artist to manifest and express the realities that only they have access to, if that makes sense.
I would add the fact that that's somehow universal. You know, it's like Kacey writes a story about her life to some degree, or she's exploring the reality that's open to her. And I read it and I'm able to understand things that are universal. Oh, I'm just wondering, here's another synchronicity, providence. You have a white t-shirt, you have a black t-shirt, and then in the middle of your t-shirt there's this black and white unity thing coming together. So or maybe I'm the third aspect and or thing between the three of us. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Like art to me has always been the portal to the reality. It's the bridge, right? It's the.
And just so you know, we talked about this the other day too. Like, to men after in our discussion we were talking about it. So I feel like some of the ideas are going to be familiar.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
But how it's like, I mean, I always say music was something that has always signified to me that even when I was nihilistic, music was the thing that it was evidence that there is a beyond. There's like a few albums I listen to, which I will compile a list and share.
Good.
They signify. It's like it's not even like it's a good album. It's that the album is proof there's another place that you can only get to with this album, and it's.
Say more, because it's only recently that I've actually been able to appreciate things like poetry. Well, you know, I think I've always appreciated poetry to some degree, but appreciated nonfiction especially. Like, there was this time in my life where I thought, you know, the only thing I should be reading is nonfiction, which sounds absurd when I think about it now. But Kacey is just shaking her head. She's probably never been in that stage.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, I remember once talking to a friend of mine and his wife, and we were having this three-way conversation, and I was telling him, you know, I just read nonfiction. He says, you know, I do the same thing. And his wife said, you know, I just read fiction. And then I said, how can you justify just reading nonfiction? Because that's like the view I had of things. It's like, what is nonfiction giving me? Like, is there any truth? Is there any reality to it? And yeah, now I see things completely differently, and I'm kind of embarrassed that I once thought that. So,
yeah. I feel like I've gotten in arguments with ex-boyfriends about this.
And I don't think you could ever convince them. The only thing you could really do is make them read a novel. Maybe that would do it.
Yeah. You have, yeah. I've been a reader my whole life, and it's been like my if I were to identify things that I am, like reader is very near the top of the list, and like I just can't imagine not having the experience, like the experience that I have reading fiction is so meaningful that I just cannot imagine like someone reading a book and not having that experience. But I mean, a good book or one next. But
so what is it about black and white shapes on a piece of paper that does that for you? Is that an unfair question to ask me?
That's a good question. Yeah, for me, reading is just it's like your eyes moving over the words. It's like I'm in a different space than that. Like I'm embodying the work. Like I'm in this. I'm like mirroring the emotions and the story and almost, you know what I mean?
This gets to Vervaeke talking about participatory and propositional doing. Like what I was all into with my nonfiction was propositional doing. Like how many facts can I pick up?
Mm-hmm.
And the person who really changed this for me was Kierkegaard, I think, more than like I read his concluding unscientific postscript and then I never saw things again the same way. So it's
I need to read all of his stuff. It's like very clear to me that his ideas are just going to click so much, and I've only read little bits and pieces.
I know they will. I know they will. You're getting at the same patterns, but so Vervaeke, I have a few things to say. So they were talking about symbols and what symbols do. Symbols are a form of participatory knowing because they open up this reality. I was thinking about the difference between scientific and poetic language. Poetic language is about opening up reality for you. Scientific language is about precise, get in. We actually don't want our words to open anything up. We want them to limit it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want precision. And what symbols do is they make you participate in it in some way. I wish I could remember what he was getting at, but this is exactly what Kierkegaard was doing. Is he was writing in these different pseudonyms, so you can basically it's a sort of an ongoing academic debate what Kierkegaard actually thought. That you can sort of piece it together from his journals, but he had so many different books under different pseudonyms, which is genius in of it itself. Which is like the way I put it the other day was like, some of us, like the three of us are sort of vaguely aware that there are other ways of seeing the world. But imagine being so empathetic that you can enter into that world completely and then write a whole book from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And wow. Okay. So where is he going with this? So what he was trying to do there is literally sort of present a mode of being. And by reading it, you're supposed to hold a mirror up to yourself. That's the way he put it. Like you should sort of see yourself in the text and have the text poke at you and try this text on. And it's a very participatory way of challenging you and opening you up to new things. And he was very much trying not to write in a direct, he called it direct communication, which is like sort of like the scientific way where you just say something directly. This is what I think. I think Kacey in her piece is actually doing the same thing. She's not trying, okay, here is my philosophy of life, straightforwardly X, Y, Z. No, she's trying to get this pattern, get this story, get this mode of being, which you see yourself in. Like, then you enter into it and you're changed when you get through it. And what Kierkegaard was saying that he didn't want he didn't want like the people to read this text with Kierkegaard on the bottom, and now this has some authority for me because Kierkegaard says it. So that's why one of the reasons he wrote under pseudonyms was, this is not about me telling you what to do. This is about, read this, let it change you, let it poke around in you, let it show you things you didn't realize. That it's an existential communication with the author in a way. It's by reading it, something new comes forth.
Mm. That's interesting, because I don't experience that with art so much.
Yeah, I don't experience that with music, so I wish you could articulate what it is about music and you, and how you go through that, and how you can make others experience the same thing.
It's kind of hard to say, because it's never been. It's, again, I guess because of the realm with, it's very hard to use instructive or specific language to explain it. But I'll give it a go. I was around 16 years old. Let me just tell a story, I guess. This is probably, I was around 16 years old, and around that time I got very interested in like lots of different types of music started opening up to me and becoming very exciting. And so I had this interesting engagement where I was like, I guess in the vinyl community, you would call it a crate digger, someone who goes through crates of vinyl and they're just looking for these obscurities and these new experiences, like what kind of universe exists on the back of this vinyl? Like, what am I going to find? And there was that culture was very much part of me, but I could just sit on Spotify or YouTube and go through everything that way. There's no need for me to go find physical things. So whilst there wasn't the physical interaction element, which is really fun with music and meaningful, you have the possibilities and the opportunities by moving through the internet and being able to just stream things very quickly and get a feel for what's going on. So, but there was one album I got, which is called Heaven or Las Vegas by Cocteau Twins. They are a Scottish dream pop shoegaze outfit from the 90s. And shoegaze, by the way, for anyone who doesn't understand, dream pop you can kind of figure out, but shoegaze was called shoegaze because the people who used to perform the music, it was kind of an offshoot of grunge, but it was very emotionally sincere, and the people were very shy, so they would just stare at their shoes whilst playing guitar like this, and so everyone just started calling it shoegaze. It's a really interesting genre. But Cocteau Twins, Heaven or Las Vegas, got it on CD, played it for the first time, and the first track came up, and I started crying a lot. And my dad came into my room and said, "Are you listening to this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I used to play this to you when you were a baby." Wow. Right. So that really that just opened the door for me. And I would listen to the album on bus journeys back and forth to different towns and see friends, and it would reveal to me infinite possibilities of emotional and transcendental environments. Let's just put it that way. I can't really use any more specific language than that. These are like dreamscapes that aren't seen. They're felt and they're imagined, and it's different. Mm-hmm. When you get a really good album an album has to gestalt in a certain way.
Yeah.
It has to be smoothed and rounded, and it has to like feel like a developed entity. You know what I mean? It has to have matured properly and been given the correct attention and care. And I seem like reading a proper novel is that way too, right? It feels like a whole.
Yeah.
Right. And
everything ties together.
Yeah. It has a common thread throughout. It might even have a narrative that's very satisfying. Some albums are concept albums that you can do fun stuff with like that. But yeah, that's what music's been for me. And there's another good example is a band called Talk Talk. They have an album called The Color of Spring, which is, I would say, it's purely religious music. It's some of the most celebratory gospel-like music I've heard for example, there's a song called "Life Is What You Make It," and that is it's just beautiful. And yeah, I'll try and put a list of together that just because it's kind of like a come and see thing. It's not a let me tell you about why. It's
for sure.
Just come and see. And if it clicks, it clicks. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But that's been my experience with music. And the thing you said about Kierkegaard being able to enter into these, he's like an empath. You know, he can just. I found like I haven't been able to do that with anything, but I have noticed I've been a Marxist, a vegan, a right-wing ideologue, a IDW guy. I've put a lot of different hats on, and I kind of feel like that participatory knowing of going around this spectrum of like different ideologies has afforded me the ability to kind of wrangle these different ideas from seemingly opposing places and hold them in unison. And that's kind of been an accidental product of follow. But to me about what you said about Kierkegaard.
Yeah, is your experience of music something like a new salient landscape opening up?
Yes.
Or a different lens you try on, or
no, it's not even a lens.
Different things pop up. Not that.
I wouldn't say so. It's almost like it's a whole
person.
It's a whole different universe. It's like a different mythology. It's like a realm where the rules that exist here don't exist in a way. Like Miles Davis has an album called Bitches Brew, and it's interesting because there's no apostrophe in bitches, so it's not. It's that they brew. It's not that this is a brew. It's that they brew, and he's referring to the musicians. And so it's this verb. The album is a verb, not a noun. And it is a it was in 1970 that it was produced and released, I think, and it is just the same rules don't apply in that little sorcerer's den. It really pulls your mind in all these different directions to the point where you think that you're listening to noise and not music, and then all of a sudden, just when you think that this organism is going to mutate to the point where it's going to fall apart, they bring it back into a groove, and it all makes sense again. And it's just this. So for me, music is like that. It's the same rules don't apply because music is a language. But I can't remember who said this. Kacey introduced me to this quote, but it's that music is everything language wishes it could be.
I mean, I think McGilchrist actually thinks that language develops from music.
Right. Yeah.
Which.
And this, I wanted to say this earlier, but if you look at the Chinese languages like Mandarin, right, they have tones. So you can say ma, 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 and ma. Four different things. It's like
yeah.
word to hemp or something like that,
He talks about like this tribe in wherever, which they sort of communicate using hums and whistles, and then sometimes they'll throw in words, and then they'll just revert back to hums and whistles or whatever.
It's interesting because the Western language is very scientific. It's all about precision, whereas Mandarin is pictographic. So there is more of a poetic element.
Yep.
And in Mandarin, you can't just look at a word and go, right, I know how to say that by looking at it. You have to have an experience with the character in order for you to know it properly. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the phonetic alphabet in Western, Latin languages is, all right, I've never seen this word before, but because of its constituent parts, I can guess how it's what it means.
What was the word you used?
Which word? Sorry.
You said there's this word you encountered that describes the Western language.
It's phonetic, right?
Yeah.
You can look at a word that you haven't seen before, say, I understand the constituent parts of this word, so I can not only decode its meaning, but I can understand how I'm supposed to say it just by looking at this new word. Whereas in Mandarin, you get given a new character or word, it's like, is that a guy sat on the toilet, or is it, an upside down? No idea, and it could mean anything. You don't know how to say it, and you don't know what it means, and that's frustrating for like someone going into it for the first time. But then when you realize all the things we're talking about, it opens up this possibility and this poetic knowing of which is very different, and it's more musical.
One thing that frustrates me is when people talking about learning, like they have this assumption that what we need to do is take information and then put it into our brain. Like we need to gather up the facts and then put them into our brain. And they'll use these metaphors like, put them, upload into the storage, these types of things. And you can't explain to this person that this isn't how it works, that you need to grasp the gestalt, and then that just plops into your mind, and then you can put everything together that way. That's one way of thinking about it. But this gestalt.
Yeah, I love hearing a German speaker say gestalt. It's like
gestalt, yeah.
Music to my ears.
All right, people who don't speak. Again?
Do you speak any other languages?
I speak a bit of German. I speak German.
Oh, great.
Fairly well, I think.
Interesting.
We did a German contest, like Manitoba wide, and I won like 3rd place in my category.
Really good. All right.
Yeah. There's like different categories for people with different backgrounds. Like, so I speak a German dialect, so this puts me in a different category than someone who like learned German from scratch, or someone who, is German, or someone who, whatever. Like people with dialects are.
It's like the weight classes in boxing.
Not quite, no. That's actually not a good analogy, because there's a different skill level. This is like a different, it's a different beast. You're coming at German from a different angle type of deal. Yeah.
The thing about German that I have such an affection for is the how direct and obvious the words are. Like the word for tool.
Yeah, Lastkraftwagen.
Oh.
That's the word for truck. It's like it basically means strong pulling wagon.
Right, I see.
Yeah. What they do is they stick these words together to form a word, and then they have these ridiculously long words, which you can pull out the individual words, and you basically have a sentence.
As Brits, I realize that we like to dress our language up a little bit so it's not so obvious, and we can be very prudent and conservative with some things. So, for example, we call it the contraceptive pill. When I learned that in Germany, they call it the anti-baby pillar. I was laughing on the floor. I mean, obviously, it was just so vulgar to me to hear that. Yeah. But that's the direct.
That's like 1984. Is that 1980? Or is that? Have you read 1984 and Brave New World?
Yeah.
Like they have these. I think it's 1984 where they have these words that sort of tidy things up, and then what they're trying to do is get progressively less words, right? So people can't communicate. Yeah.
I feel like I've been talking for too long about music. So.
We should get Kacey started on art or on novels.
Wow.
I had my little Kierkegaard rant. You had your little music rant.
I don't know. I'm not much of I always say, like, I have a hard time bringing what goes on in my head out of my mouth in like a charming and lighthearted way. Like, it's always like.
You need to try. You need to keep at it.
Yeah.
It's easy to get to say, this is ineffable. This is impossible to communicate. right? But you need to try. You need to try to communicate. It's
That is it.
important.
Well, what do you want to know?
Well, who's your favorite author?
Well, the person I always say it is, and she's definitely up there, is Virginia Woolf.
Mm.
But see, this is the thing. Like, I always run into this issue where the things that I read and love mean so much to me, and like the experience of reading them is like so moving, and like I like instantly when I'm done want to be like, oh my gosh, you need to read this thing. And then like when someone asks like why or like what was it about or like these very questions, I'm like, I could not tell you. Like,
Right.
Like I and this is where like
Yeah.
I think I'm on the extreme end of not having the intellectual like, or I don't know what you want to call it.
The left brain, yeah.
Because it's just like I can't do it. And I think I could if I like made it like an effort to reread it multiple times and like think about it in that way. But usually I'm just once, and so it's in.
And I think the novel though is still a part of you. It's fed your imagination. It's created new insights. It's created new intuitions. It's developed new modes of being. It's created different ways of seeing the world. It's created probably new ways of acting in the world. Like that's how I feel about with Kierkegaard. I mean, I can articulate a lot of what Kierkegaard thinks, but a lot of what I've got from Kierkegaard has just been I've just been shaped in fundamental ways.
Yeah, I 100% feel that. I feel like there's just this absorption that happens that it's just like it's just this blind process that happens, and it's just.
I always remember reading Fitzgerald, I think, and I had this moment where it's when you read something from an author and they describe an experience or feeling you have that you've never ever been able to articulate. You've never even imagined that you needed to articulate it, or maybe you didn't even know you had this feeling.
Wow.
And they just put it down. They just put it down in words, and you're like, that's magic, right? That's it. So that's always been my pull towards lit for me. And I think my like heart goes out to you and people like you. And like there was that conversation on Discord where people were like, let's have a little women's chat. And I was like, I should definitely do that because there's the old trope that it's a man's world. Like it really is. You think about like you demand left-brained explanations for why people like things they do all the time. And it's it just doesn't work for having for being you.
There's this moment in Casey's piece where she has this thing about women always having this sense of being watched, and then this sort of creates this game where you have this. I think if I got it right, you have this increased empathy, which so you sort of see more what the other person is about, and then you can change yourself to fit. So it's like they have this agent arena relationship thing going where they can sort of change the arena a bit and then sort of start playing with the guy in a cat and mouse way. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Like I think Jared described that like double consciousness that happens where you can like I'm splitting my thoughts into like how the other person is perceiving what I'm doing, you know?
Wow. Does that not feel like a strain for you? Because I sometimes do that, but when I do that, I feel like I'm corrupting my mind. Like I need.
Well, and also like I almost changed. Like I remember those particular sentences, and I almost changed it to not a woman, but an anxious woman, because I was in a particularly like anxious. Like I feel like that's when you're on the defense in some way. Like you're trying to like you're too concerned with
the intention.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, you see this is just a bit of a more extreme example, but just the way women have to, watch the signals they're giving off, that type of thing. I mean, it's quite something. Like men and women, like women will often like in the social setting, they'll drink much less than men, just to have sort of their heightened awareness, I guess. And men will be just like, this doesn't even cross their mind.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's intention, something I struggle with. I get it wrong. I read people's intentions wrong all the time. Like someone will say something completely harmless and I'll be like, what did you just say to me? And Casey will be like, you just calm down.
Yeah, I do that big time. Yeah, I had this recent experience where that was one of the worst things ever. If you would stop recording, I would tell you about it. But
yeah, we can do an after hours session.
Yeah, but it was me sort of reading the situation in a certain way, and then seeing more things. Like I started attending to things, and then like my dysfunctional narrative got projected onto reality, and then reality sort of made things salient that reinforced the narrative, and then I turned out to be completely and utterly wrong. And boy, that was
feel good, right? There's something about it that's just so, I don't know, for me it's.
Have you ever had this experience where you thought something about someone and then it turned out you were just wrong in a unforgivable way?
Yeah.
And then you feel horribly guilty afterwards.
Not only that, but the thing that I assumed about the other person was actually something about myself that I was too blind to see. That's the worst.
Oh, I haven't thought about that layer, but I'm sure it was there too.
Wow. Yeah, that's bad. But there's I'm noticing something strange that I think I don't think it's just a schizophrenic paranoid delusion. Yesterday I was out trying to do some shopping and I came home and I was kind of upset because I was like, Casey, people are treating me very rudely. People aren't very nice to me. What is it about me? What is it? They're talking about me. There's something going on. And then I realized I think it's something in the closer I get to God, let's say, or the more embedded I am in discovering my faith, and the need for a community. Whilst that increases, my distance from the modern person or the typical modern person seems to increase. And we're in a downtown area of a major city in California, and there's a very specific type of person here, and there's a very specific type of culture, and it's very materialist. It's very woke, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm starting to really feel this tension emerging, this distance between what I find meaningful and even necessary, and then what I'm actually getting from the person on the street. And it's leading me to feel like I'm in a psychosis. And
wow. Yeah. Gotcha.
I really don't like it. It's scary to me. It's confusing.
Watch out for cynicism there and self-righteousness. Yeah.
Right.
It's a big one.
Yeah, I've been bitten by that before, and I've got friends who are really disillusioned, and that's a path that you just don't want to go down, because you see what happens to people who do that. They turn into the shooter archetype, right? Not in all cases, but I think I can, if I really empathize with these people who do these things, I can kind of see the route that one would take to get there. That's terrifying,
Wow.
It's kind of terrifying. But of course, that's not an option. So
yeah, it's the Auschwitz prison guard from Peterson, eh?
Yep, exactly. When you see that part of yourself, it's pretty scary. I recently read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning too.
I have it at home, but I haven't read it.
It's really good. Really good.
Is it a tough read, or kind of the?
No, like he doesn't speak about the atrocities themselves, but the personal and psychological, the phenomenological
Okay.
experiences of the people who submitted to this thing. So like the fact, like when someone dies or someone's starving, there'll be nudges between the other inmates saying this guy's next, and then there'll be unceremonious lining up toward the dead body to take the food off his plate, the shoes off his feet, maybe a trinket he's managed to hide. And it's it's that stuff that scares me the most about the experience, the experiences in a concentration camp, rather than the brutality is the brutality. We know all about that, but the existential
mode
environment that these people have, that
agent arena relationship.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
I know what agent arena relationship is. When you said it earlier in the Discord, it intrigued me. I was like, oh, I gotta Google it.
Is that not a Brené Brown type thing?
It's like it's when the interaction between you and the environment. So you bring something to the environment. You bring this. You see certain things, and then these certain things feed back onto you. So you find a different way of interacting with reality, and that changes you. And then the way you're changed by reality feeds back into reality, and then there's this feedback loop, and it can be really positive in that you're picking up patterns, and the patterns are changing you, and then you're feeding them back and getting more patterns, and back, and you're growing, and reality is getting bigger. Or it can be exactly the opposite, which is like what happens in addiction, which is like so think of something like an alcohol addiction. How would this go? Like you're drinking alcohol, and then this changes you, and you get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. This is like you guys need to read The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. His notion of hell is like this little place inside a crevice. So there's heaven, which is like the most real, and there's this crevice, this tiny crack that's so tiny you can't even go down, and that's where hell is, because everyone is shrunk into themselves. There's this guy who becomes a grumble. Like that's what he is. He's a grumble. Becomes so shrunken into this is his agent arena relationship. Is he just sees everyone as it's him against the world. That's his agent arena relationship, and then that's what he sees, and it feeds back these negative patterns, and it changes him, and it's dysfunctional, cycling back. And so these ghosts, they're literally ghosts from heaven. They go literally. Yeah, I'm getting. These ghosts from hell go to heaven, and they can't even touch it. Right? It's too real for them. Because they're shrunken into this crevice.
It's a really terrifying thought. It is.
So agent arena relationship, that's like, that's always happening one way or another. It's just whether it's in a positive way or a negative way.
Yeah, it's participatory knowing, right? It's being changed by the patterns you pick up from reality, and then this coming back to you, and then you bring more to reality, then reality brings more to you. And like, I'm just channeling the Vervaeke hand motions now. But guys, I need to go in 2 minutes, so
we should probably
eat it.
This has been so delightful.
Yeah, we've got the best time, so we should do it again. Like
we will. This is delightful and cute and all of the nice things.
So lovely to talk to you, like, well, not in person, but virtually in person.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
good, man. So like, let's I'll send you the recording of this, and we can figure out if we want to do something with it.
Just whatever. I'm fine with posting it if you guys didn't share too much personal stuff. Good.
No, you know what we're like, right? We're
Yeah.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Julian. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. I love you guys.
Oh,
I
Later.
love you too, man.
yeah.
Bye.
Good. Bye.
Oh my God, I love that guy.
He's so cute.